we're going to take a look at central measures and measures of dispersion. Basically, what this has to do with is if we have a bunch of numbers, we want to know, well, first of all, where do they center? And second, how spread out they are. So I've set up a couple examples here, and we need to get familiar with these terms, mean, median, and mode, if we aren't already. So here's my set of numbers in orange, and I want to know the mean. Now the mean is basically you can think of as the average, and the way we're going to get the mean is we're going to add all the numbers and divide by the number of numbers that we have. So in this case, I do 4 plus 7 plus 8 plus 12 plus 8 plus 7 plus 15, and then I would divide that all by how many of them I have, which in this case is 7. So something that I've seen many people do is actually, when doing the mean, they remember to add up all the numbers, but then they forget to actually divide by the amount that they had, which of course will lead to a wrong answer. So I went ahead and put this in, and we see 8.7 about for our mean. Now we have the symbol for the mean right here, mu. And if you see that symbol, just know that means find the mean or average. The median is the middle. And in order to get the middle, we need to first rank the data. And what that means is to put it in order. So this data right here, I have 4, 7, 8, 12, 8, 7, 15 is not ranked. It's out of order. So in order to do the median, I would first need to write it in order. So 4, 7, 7, 8, 8, 12, 15. And then what I'm going to look for is the middle number. In this case, I see two of them, 8 and 8. And if that happens, I would average those two numbers together. The average of 8 and 8 is simply 8. The mode is the most frequent. And sometimes you could have more than one of these. So I take a look at all my numbers. I see what's the most frequent. I see an 8 happens twice, a 7 happens twice. So my modes, in this case, are 7 and 8 because they both happen twice. I have another smaller set of data here, 2, 5, 9, 14. So let's find the mean of that. The mean is going to be the sum of those divided by, well, there's 4 of them. So divide by 4. What was the other number? 9 and 14. So I type those in, and I get 30. That's not my answer. Divide by 4. And 7.5. So 7.5. Okay, now our median, if I take a look at this, and I'll use MED to represent median. If I look at my data, I have 5 and 9 right here. Those are both in the middle, so 5 plus 9 divided by 2. That's going to be 14 divided by 2, and that equals 7. And our mode, well, in this case, they all happen one time. So since they all happen one time, I would write no mode. Now, just as a little extra FYI, suppose I had this data, and I asked, well, what's the mode? 2 happens twice, 5 happens twice, 9 happens twice. Again, it's going to be no mode because all the data it happens an equal number of times. Okay, so that was measures of central measures. Next, we'll take a look at measures of spread or dispersion. And what this tells us is how far apart our data is. Now, range and interquartile range should be things that you're already familiar with, but perhaps you're not as familiar with variance and standard deviation. So the definition I'm going to give is not very precise, but it should get the essence away. Standard deviation is basically, on average, how far apart the data is from the mean. So, of course, the bigger the number here for standard deviation, the more spread out the data is from the mean, and the lower the number, the closer it is to the mean. There's going to be lots of uses for standard deviation that we'll find here shortly. A variance is the standard deviation squared, but actually in order to find standard deviation, we actually need to find variance first. So here's my example. It's in orange, 4, 6, 10. I didn't give a lot of data right here just because it'll be easier to show with a lower amount. So the variance, the way we get it is for each data, we're going to take each data point, I'll call it X, subtract our mean from it, square it, and we're going to do that for all of them, and then I'm going to divide by the number of data that I have. So in this case, I need to find the mean before I even begin. So let's do that. I'll do it down here. So the mean of this data is going to be 4 plus 6 plus 10, and there's 3 pieces of data. So this will be 20 divided by 3. And for our purposes, we can go ahead and round, but 20 divided by 3 is 6.7 will be good enough for us anyway. So in order to find our variance, we're going to do 4 minus 6.7, square it, plus 6 minus 6.7, square it, and then 10 minus 6.7, square that, and then divide that all by 3 because we have 3 pieces of data. So I'll go ahead and type that in right here. Now, of course, if I wanted to be more precise, I would keep more of these decimal places. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and do that since I am on the calculator. No reason to round to the 10th. And got to square each one, and I'm adding each of these up. And after I do that, I'm going to divide by 3 because I had 3 pieces of data, and I get 6.22. So our variance is 6.22. Now the hard part's done. The standard deviation is going to be the square root of 6.22. So I will square root that. And I get 2.49. So on average, my data is 2 units from the mean, or 2.5 units from the mean. And the mean was 6.7. Range is easy. That is high minus low, but you'd be surprised despite how easy that is to do, how many people forget that the range is simply the high data minus the low data. So in this case, 10 minus 4, 6 is our range. Now, interquartile range, I'm going to do in a second because this data is not very good for that, but interquartile range is the third quartile minus the first quartile, and we'll get there in a second. We'll revisit it here in a moment. Okay, and this example might work for that. So it asks us for our mean, median, mode, draw a box and whisker plot, and find the interquartile range. So let's talk about this box and whisker plot. It's simply called the 5-number, well, sometimes it's called the 5-number summary. But really what we're looking for is a bunch of medians. So to find our box and whisker plot, we first find our median. All right? The number that is ranked, there's my median. So there's my median, and that's also called quartile 2. And what that does is it divides my data into 2 halves. All right, so I have 2 halves of my data. 50% of the data is over here, and 50% of the data is over here. Now I need to find my first quartile and my second or my third quartile. So my first quartile, I see that I have this half of the data. My first quartile is going to be the median of the first half of the data. So in this case, it's going to be 3 plus 7 divided by 2, so 5. So Q1 in this case is 5. So what I do is I do a big line right here at 5, and 10 was my median, so a big line right there. Now I need Q3. Q3 is going to be 15 plus 18 divided by 2. So 33 divided by 2, not times. And I get 16.5. So here's 16, so 16.5 right about there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect these. And now I need my whiskers. The whiskers are the numbers at the end, the 3 and the 18. So 3 is right here, there's a whisker. And 18, there's a whisker. And in order to do these, you do need a nicely drawn number line. So don't be sloppy about it. Make it nice and neat when you do these. Now, it also asked me for the mean, median, mode. It didn't ask me for the variance and standard deviation, but I'm actually going to go ahead and find those anyway. So let me get some room right here. And let's go ahead and do that. So our mean is going to be 3 plus 7 plus 10 plus 15 plus 18, all divided by 5. So let's go ahead and do that. And we'll divide that by 5. And 10.6 looks good. Now we've also already found the median, so our mode is, well, no number is more frequent than the others, so no mode. And we drew our box and whisker plot. Now, we weren't asked for the variance and standard deviation, but let's go ahead and find them. So variance is going to be 3 minus 10.6 squared plus ... We go all the way to the end. I'm not going to write them all out. 18 minus 10.6 squared. And we'll divide that all by 5. So I'll go ahead and put that in. So 3 you'll want to be careful as you're writing this because it would be with a large group of numbers be very easy to get lost. See, I already messed that up. It's 10.6 is my mean. So the way to find variance is to take your mean, subtract it from each data point. All right, and plus it does take a little while to put in. Luckily, we'll be seeing a way to easily put it into our calculator and get all the information that we are looking for without all this extra typing. But not yet, and we'll divide that by 5. Hopefully I didn't make a mistake there. So 21.8, I'm sure someone will point it out if I did. All right, and our standard deviation is going to be the square root of that. So I'll square root my answer. 4.67. That looks good. And that gives us all of these, and we have our 5 number or box and whisker plot. 5 number summary, see last number, first quartile, second quartile, third quartile, and our end. Now, I said we would get back to interquartile range, so let's go ahead and do that. Our interquartile range is going to be Q3 minus Q1. So Q3 minus Q1, that's our interquartile range. And in this case, that would be our 16.5 minus our 5, which gives us 11.5 for our interquartile range. So not too terribly difficult right there. Okay, let's do another. So practicing our box and whisker. Now remember, box and whisker, we want to first start by finding our median. So as I look at this data right here, I have 2 numbers right there. So my median is going to be 15 plus 18 divided by 3. I think I just did that, didn't I? A second ago. Oh well. So divide that by 3. and get 11. Okay, so I guess I did not. Why did I divide that by 3? Divided that by 2. So 33 divided by 2. 16.5, yeah. All right, so I was going to say 11 would be over here. So our median is 16.5. So I put at 16.5, number right there. All right, so that divides my data into 2 halves. Now, depending upon the situation, you could split the data in half right here, and then go with the 2 halves like right there, but I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to say that, no, yeah, I will do it like that. So I'm going to do this. Okay, that's my first half, and this is my second half. So we have a split into 2 halves, and now my Q1 is going to be 7 plus 12 divided by 2. So that's 19 divided by 2. And just to talk about what I was saying a second ago about how to split the data, if you have an even number of data like this was happening, depending upon the situation, you might include the 15 and 18 on both sides, or you might just do 5 to 12 here and the 24 to 40 right here. Neither one is necessarily better than the other. All right, so 9.5. So 9.5. And right here we would have for Q3, and we'll talk about what those mean in a second. So 56 divided by 2, that's 28. Okay, so there's my box plot. Hopefully you make yours a lot neater than I am. Now our whiskers, 5 and 40. Okay, so find the central and spread measures. I think you get the point for that, so I'm not going to do that on this example, but let's talk about what these quartiles mean. So what they mean here is, here's my Q1, here's my median, here's my Q3, here are my whiskers. So Q1 says that 25% of the data happens here. My median tells me that if I go from here to here, I'm going to have an additional 25% of the data, but from here to all the way over here, well, that's, of course, 50% of the data. Q3 adds another 25% of the data, which means if I go all the way across and I land right here, hopefully you guessed it, 75% of the data has occurred. Okay, let's go on. Final example of this stuff simply has some already made box and whisker plots, and it asks for the Q1, Q3, median, and IQR. So on this one, 21, 20, so 19. So our median is 19. And this would be 10. So Q1 is 10. And Q3 is going to be 23. Now our IQR would be 23 minus 10, which is 13. Now if I wanted our range, we would do this number minus this number. All right, this one over here. So our median is 25. Our Q1, 25, 24, 23, 22. Q3, 26, 27, 28. And our IQR would be 28 minus 22, so 6. And each one of these basically works the same way. I'm just reading the information off of the plots. 23, 24, 25, 26. And then to do IQR, I do Q3 minus Q1. And the last one right here, our median, I like starting with the median. So 11, 12, I think I made a mistake. I think these were counting by twos. Yeah, these were definitely counting by twos. So I think that this was 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Yes, they definitely were. 24, 26, 28, 30. So let's real quick change all my answers because that's a pretty dumb mistake right there. Pay attention to your things. So Q1 was 12 up here. Q3 was 24. That one wasn't so bad. Our median was then 16, which means my IQR is 24 minus 12, which is 12. So let's fix this one. I think this one was also counting by twos. I think anyway. 24. Let's see. 22. 20. 18. 16. Yep. That's 18. So Q1 should have been 18. Right here, this should have been 24. And this should have been 28. This should have been 30, which means my IQR is 30 minus 18, which is 12. Oh boy. So down here, again, looks like counting by twos. Okay, so our Q1 should have been 18. Our median should be 22. No, not 22. 24, 26, 26. Our Q3 should have been 30. So our IQR should be 30 minus 18. So 12. Huh. Again. All right, and I'm not going to bother with that last one. Same idea. Okay, so you practice, see what you come up with for this. Find the central and spread measures. So what that means is find the mean, the variance, and the standard deviation. Also find the median, mode, and for our spread, that would also be doing the range. Okay, so the answer will be up in a second, so pause, give it a try. And I'm going to show the answer here shortly. Answer. All right, so make sure you got those numbers. Here's the box and whisker plot drawn.